and ground operations. What's happened in Gaza is also what many are describing globally and increasingly so as a humanitarian disaster. There are thousands who've been killed in Israeli strikes as well. However much you may dispute the numbers that have been put out by Gaza's health ministry, how will the peace plan impact Israel's operations in Gaza?
Look, the first thing is that a ceasefire came into place now. And Israel, like in the past, have always fulfilled its commitment and have always respected the agreements that we've signed on. And that will be the case now as well. Unfortunately, Hamas time after time violated those agreements. Look, when we see a war, there isn't a pretty war. It's a terrible scene. It's a horrible scene. There's victims on both sides. Innocent people, lives are being lost. If you think there's any war with rainbows and unicorn when it's clean and there's no civilian casualties, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. But you do know that Israel has done everything in its capability to try and avoid a war. Israel, even after the 7th of October, when it took us 3 weeks to set operation to go into Gaza with our military, have put a request to Hamas that if they disarm and they return all the hostages, there won't be a single soldier in Gaza. And they decline, right? They declined so many times after that a ceasefire proposal was put on the table. So you need to understand the responsibility for the war, for the tragedy, lies on the hands of Hamas and Hamas only. They are the one who declared war on the 7th of October, murdering thousands of Israelis, abducting hundreds of civilians, torturing them. Try and imagine what would happen in India if in one morning, Pakistan, and if I compare the size of the population, Pakistan in one day would execute tens of thousands of Indians and abducted thousands of them back to Pakistan and torture them every single day. What would be the responsibility of the Indian government to bring them back, to ensure the safety of the rest of the citizens, that something like that will never happen again? Well, it happened to us. And we have to make sure that our children are safe. And if anyone can truly understand us, is the Indian people who have suffered under radical Islam quite a bit. And there's a lot of similarities between our struggle and the Indian struggle against radical Islamists. In that case, when you declare war, there will be consequences. When you murder innocent civilians, there are consequences. And if you refuse to a ceasefire, if you refuse to return the hostages, you refuse to disarm, what do you expect us to do? Just stand on the side and do nothing while they abuse and rape and torture our children, our girl? I don't think that any country would have acted like that. And I think that what Israel has done, any other country won't just respond the same, but I think it would have responded much more aggressively and much more fiercely.
Okay, but since you mentioned India, there's one important point of divergence between our government and the Israeli government, and that is that India backs a two-state solution. Many other countries have now stepped forward and decided to recognize a Palestinian state. Even the peace plan has a clause where there is a mention of eventual statehood based on several conditions for Palestine. Mr. Netanyahu is not keen on the idea of a two-state solution. Is this something that might isolate Israel in the future? How are you viewing it?
Look, the 20 points in Trump's peace plan is very clear. And instead of talking of this obsession of a two-state solution, he actually talks about what's really matter. He talks about education and how to de-radicalize an entire population that's been indoctrinated by a terrorist organization called Hamas. He speaks about an economical prosperity. He speaks about an autocrat government that would lead the Palestinian people to a better future than what they've experienced until now under a terrorist government. And you also need to understand, look, Israel has made so many concessions throughout the years in order to achieve peace and stability. And Gaza it was the two-state solution. They had independence to govern themselves, to rule themselves, but they turned it into a terrorist nest where they've invested all of their economy, all of the infrastructure, all of the billions of dollars that were invested there in hatred, in violence, and in death. It failed, and it failed miserably, and it exploded in our face with the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And so it's about time we put this obsession of the two-state solution on the side and concentrate, like Trump said, on the important issue. How do we reach a place where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side? How do we teach Palestinian children that Israelis are not the enemy, but they are neighbors, that we can live in peace? And that starts through an education system, de-radicalization, economical prosperity. And I think this is the real conversation we need to have.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Haskel. All the best with the peace plan. And let's see if Hamas keeps its side of the bargain as well. Thank you so much for joining us.